Hello and welcome to episode 5 of TINLA Tarot's deck review. Today we're talking about Wyspell decks. These are wonderful decks because they are very accessible. They are readily available on Amazon and other retailers for between $10 and $20 depending on when you catch them on sale. And they are just really great. I hate to say for beginners, but for people who maybe aren't as familiar with tarot, their messages are really great. There's a lot of room for interpretation, so I love that. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm pulling two of my Wyspell decks here. We've got the Wild Reflections Tarot deck and the Sacred Witch Tarot. I'm going to go ahead and start by saying I love the boxes on these things. I know I'm such a weirdo about that, but these actual firm two-part boxes are fantastic. I have real beef with what are called the they're the tab boxes. I can't think of the name right now. It's killing me. But the boxes that are used for like decks of cards, like regular decks of cards, I can't stand those. And these, though, come with very sturdy boxes that are great for display and great for preservation. Not only do they come with these great boxes, but they also have wonderful guides in them. They are well constructed, and they give you both the upright and the reverse meanings, as well as those meanings in terms of love and career and finances. So they're really comprehensive and very useful to those just getting started. They also give you some spreads that you can use. And I would just say, if you're looking for a great starter deck, anything by Wyspell is going to be fantastic. I pronounce it Wyspell. It could be Wyspell. I apologize to the creators for that, but it isn't exactly clear on Amazon or whatever how that's pronounced. So I want to go ahead and go through this. As always, we're going to compare to the original Rider-Waite Tarot. We're going to look at the Wild Reflections deck over here and the Sacred Witch Tarot over here, and then you can see some of the differences. I won't try to take up all the time here, but if you are looking to enhance your collection or maybe start your collection, it would be a great idea to kind of get a sense of what we're looking at here. So just, to begin the Fool's journey, as it were, we have our typical Fool, starting the journey here. And then in the Wild Reflections deck, we can see they've obviously swapped genders as they have with the Sacred Witch Tarot. Here we have a fox, there's a dog here, and there's actually no animal here in the Sacred Witch Tarot. So there's a little bit of a room for interpretation, but they're all facing this way, which is kind of interesting. Next, we're going to move on to the Magician. Again, we have some deviations here in terms of the theme. I mean, it almost seems like the Magician here is more intuiting things, whereas the Magician in the Sacred Witch Tarot is almost, I don't want to say malevolent, but more of a manipulator than is in the Wild Reflections Tarot, which is much more of a holistic view, and the Magician in the normal Rider-Waite is very neutral, if you will. The High Priestess, we can see there's a lot more similarities between the Sacred Witch and the traditional. And, we have the two pillars here. In this one, in the Wild Reflections, we don't have those pillars, but we do have some very similar themes. And again, it lends itself more to interpretation on this side of it. But either way, it works depending on your mood. The Empress, again, in the traditional Rider-Waite, it's very just much an energy of, it's springtime energy. It's a powerful divine feminine energy. In the Sacred Witch, it is more of a communing with nature here. And in the Wild Reflections, there's actually, this implication of new life, birth, that sort of thing. And that can, of course, mean birth in terms of the traditional sense of birthing a child or birthing of an idea. The Emperor, this is our Aries energy. We have in the Wild Reflections more of a Native American feel to it. Where it's almost like an ancient wisdom, whereas the Emperor in the Sacred Witch conveys much more of just a power and authoritative energy. And that's, I think, the key thing here is when you're picking a deck for a particular reading, sometimes you want to, not that you want to, or spirit might lead you to a particular deck, and there are different senses, there's different feelings, there's a different palpability to each deck. And you can see these as we go across. And that's what I'm trying to share with you here is, even though these are, of course, the same cards and the same designer in terms of Wyspell, there's just a very different aura, different energy to each of these things, again, even across the same cards. So here with the Hierophant in the traditional, we can see it's much more religiously oriented. There's a sense of tradition, a sense of almost like a sacred union. There's also a sacred union of sorts in the Wild Reflection, but it's more of like humankind communing with nature. Whereas, again, going to the Sacred Witch, it's more of a communion with the greater spirit of the earth or the universe versus nature. There's more of a magical undertone for this Hierophant here. The Lovers, again, looking here, we can see some of the traditional meanings with the Rider-Waite. I'm going to go ahead and flip that over because it's a little, uncool for YouTube. But, you can really feel with the Wild Reflections, it's not so much about a choice like it can often be in the traditional, but more about an embracing of a divine love, a divine counterpart, and you can interpret that. I don't mean to imply anything, because this is really, tarot is always about your intuition and your feelings. But here we can see there's just much more of a sense of communion of two souls versus a choice. Same thing here with the lovers in the Sacred Witch Tarot. It's very much a sense of not just communing with each other, but communing with nature, of the natural order of things. And then we're coming to the Chariot. You can see here with the Chariot, there's differences that are reflected here between the two different versions, where you have the white Sphinx and the black Sphinx. I know there's a reflection. I'm so sorry about that. There you go. And here we have the white horse and the black horse. This Chariot driver is sort of letting nature take its course. There's not a lot of actual movement in the card, but with the Wild Reflections, there is movement, and the person that is driving the Chariot is actually using the whip to move things forward, and these horses are in action, whereas in the Sacred Witch, it's almost like you're willing things to happen, and we have these mystical dragons taking place. So again, those can mean very different things depending on your reading. Number 8, your Strength card. Always you have an animal being sort of tamed here. In the traditional, it's, just an individual with a lion. We have that same energy in the Wild Reflections, but there's, again, much more of a sense of like communing with that animal, not just subduing it. Whereas in the Sacred Witch, it's almost, it's a two-headed wolf. So there's a supernatural sense to it. Again, I don't mean to imply meanings where, you can interpret them on their own. The Hermit, of course, here in the traditional is someone who is seeking within to get some wisdom and getting some guidance, some light, but maybe withdrawing here. The Hermit in the Wild Reflections is, getting that same sort of clarity, but in more of a modern, I hate to say modern because it's very ancient as well, but in a meditative way. And the Hermit in the Sacred Witch is more magical in nature and really speaks to that cave, someone in the cave and withdrawing, whereas the Hermit here in the original isn't necessarily withdrawing. This is somebody who's just sort of seeking guidance. The Wheel of Fortune is going to be our number 9, and we have this traditional symbol here of the wheel, of course, in the Wheel of Fortune, number 10, but whereas it's full of just rich older symbolism in the Rider-Waite, in the Wild Reflections, you can see here, this is an individual who is almost taking charge of the turn of the wheel, whereas in the Sacred Witch, it's almost like nature is taking its course. So you can see the dichotomy here between almost taking charge of one's fate and the next actions versus over here, letting nature take its course. And this is why I always say the deck that you're using can very much impact the reading that you come up with. Looking at Justice, number 11, again, there's a very stoic sense with the original, with Justice, that this is something that is by law, that is just how it is. The truth is what it is. It's a very dry, cut and dry energy of that. Whereas in the Wild Reflections, it's more of an illumination of, hey, this is how it is, and we need to look at both sides. Whereas Justice in the Sacred Witch is more about weighing things in comparison to one another, and is one option better than the other? Is something more heart over head or spirit over earth? So again, I can't stress this enough. It's all about what you're looking for here. The Hanged Man, obviously we have 3 different individuals all upside down. The Hanged Man in the original almost seems like he or she is seeking enlightenment, a different perspective by being in this position. So is this person in Wild Reflections, different perspective, but vis-a-vis, a almost meditative yoga position. And the Hanged Man in the Sacred Witch is more about, with the snake here, this energy, almost having a different perspective coming to one, almost like a free will. When I'm thinking Garden of Eden, I'm thinking, something that is coming upon you, whether you like it or not. Like this person may have been just trying to commune with nature on his or her own, but, nature is taking its course and causing a change that maybe they weren't expecting. But again, do as you see fit. The Death card, let's take a look at this, is a very big difference. Death in the original is very much the Grim Reaper, coming for all who are there. Let's go over to the Sacred Witch. You've got death being a sense of emptiness, a sense of difference between the ocean in the background, the sunset, and the dry desert here with the scorpion. Of course, it is Scorpio energy, but, it's more of a determined energy, and you've got the unicorn horn. So it's not just something that is truly a horse. It's mystical in a sense. It's rebirth. You've got the death moth here on the flag. It just very much speaks to, a painful ending of sorts, but something that is almost mystically guided. Whereas, by contrast in Wild Reflections, it's giving a sense of go into the light, Caroline. You know, this ending is a beautiful thing. It's something that is majestic. It's something that is wild and free and just the way it is. So there's just a very different energy, a different feel between these decks. Temperance, you know, we've got somebody, you know, we got the angel in the traditional, just the angel itself meting out this balance, this equilibrium between the, you know, the foot on the grass, the foot in the water, the cups being even. Here in Wild Reflections, it speaks of more of a dichotomy, more of this split self and reaching a balance within oneself. Whereas Sacred Witch looks like someone alchemizing, someone who is manufacturing a balance where maybe there wasn't one before. And I think, you know, as I go through these, it really is the magic and the mystery of tarot is when when you're guided or drawn to a deck, whatever that deck may be, it really alters the reading so significantly, because there's just so much of a differential in terms of what's going on in these different things, the essence, the aura of these cards. I mean, in the traditional devil, you know, you have these two individuals chained to an obsession, basically, to something that is harmful to them. And I'm going to flip the card because of how it appears. Whereas, you know, there's almost a sense in the Wild Reflections that this is a voluntary chaining. This is almost like a pleasurable, from a sensual perspective, chaining. And in the devil with the Sacred Witch, you know, we're looking at something that where obsession triumphed over the will of others. You know, again, take it how it resonates, but that's the point, right? The Tower in the original, lightning striking, people being yeeted out of this tower. We have a tower here as well in the Wild Reflections, but notice it's only the people that are being yeeted. We have the animals that are very much stable on top of that. So perhaps you are feeling at odds with nature, with your natural sense, right? We have, I mean, this is not changed. The background is not changed, but the people are. So it could be that this is very much a sense of, you know, your environment is not as changed as you think it might be. You might be out of sync with that environment, and that's causing the change. Whereas here, the Tower in the Sacred Witch is very much, you know, it's caused by a dragon. You've got a dragon coming in here and blasting it down, and people, again, falling from the tower. So it's almost like a supernatural intervention, you know, perhaps a change in faith, a change in dynamic with that. Next, moving on to the Star. I mean, we have here in the traditional Star, you know, just an individual pouring out water, and there's of course stars in the background. It's hope, it's healing. And then in the Star in the Wild Reflections, there's an individual almost setting up a picnic for someone else, a hope and expectation that someone's going to be joining of sorts. Whereas the Star in the Sacred Witch is an individual pouring out energy, pouring out love and hope and healing to the world at large. You know, but you know, you can see the contrast in Wild Reflections. It's somebody who is expecting a hope and a healing with someone else, whereas the Star is more of a universal healing. And the Star in the Rider-Waite, the general Rider-Waite, is just more conceptual than anything else. The Moon. You know, the moon in the traditional, it has a lot of, I'm not going to lie, strange imagery with the little lobster and all that. In the Wild Reflections, you can see you've got a dog and a wolf. You know, we know that the dog, of course, is this descendant of the wolf, and there's almost like a peace being reached between them in the moon. Whereas in the Sacred Witch, there's a division. I mean, we have people, you know, where the moon itself is weeping, this water of change, and you know, the querent, the person asking the question, is sort of standing in this water of mystery between two options. So again, very different interpretations. The Sun in both, you know, we have this happy baby situation, very Teletubbies almost, right, with the Sun in the traditional Rider-Waite. But in the Wild Reflections, we have someone, you know, banging a gong here, celebrating, actively celebrating the almost birth of a new star, of a new hope, of a new beautiful thing, really just embracing that. Whereas the Sun in the Sacred Witch, there's a lot of complexity here. It's not as simple as that. The happiness is not as clear cut. You know, you've got these daffodils, I think, you know, representing the beginning of a springtime situation. We've got a skeletal unicorn again, and a dragon. There's a lot of like mythological connotation here. There's a lot of, you know, we got red flags, you know, take with that what you will, but it's very much a turning of the seasons that is leading to a new beginning of happiness. And so again, I can't stress this enough, it just really is up to interpretation, and that's very clear in the Judgment card. You know, in your traditional Judgment card, you got this archangel coming in and, you know, raising people from the dead. And I have to flip it again, or almost flip it, because let me just do this here. Look, bam. Okay. You've got this archangel calling the faithful, whereas the Judgment in the Wild Reflections is an individual color. You know, she's almost representing almost like a Medusa essence, a sense of powerfulness, a sense of really taking charge and driving fate forward and embracing the natural sense of things. I mean, you can take anything you want from this, and that's the beauty of it. But this person is giving a look that really speaks to a variety of emotions, a power really to her. And the Judgment card and the Sacred Witch, by contrast, is your Phoenix energy. It's, yes, you're talking about rising from the dead again, but it's almost you burn down to get there. So just, again, so many interpretations that can be gotten just across different decks. And this is why, I really feel that, when you're starting your tarot collection, you should go with decks that speak to you across the different cards, because they're very, very different. And that's why I love my collection so much, and I'm so happy to share it with you, because when I pick, decks for various readings that I do, I go with what spirit leads me to. But you can see just even in these two deck comparisons here, how that really impacts the reading. Anyway, enough of that. So what we're going to do is look at the world. The world, of course, here in the traditional is just an ending of a cycle across different periods of time, whereas the world in the Wild Reflections is more of a time of rest, of rejuvenation, of, coming to a new place. Right here, we got all 4 flowers. So it's like different. It's almost like you're the same, but you're different. Things are moving along a cycle, but in a way that's not terribly different. It's more of a period of, again, rest and rejuvenation. Whereas here in the original, we have just totally different types of beasts, if you will. And in the world with the Sacred Witch, you got a wolf, you got some kind of crow or raven, a unicorn, and a dragon, and a mermaid in the middle. And so there's this mix of whimsy and fantasy, of a new beginning. Maybe it's the idea of a new beginning being fantastical, or, having an optimism of a new beginning, or maybe an unwarranted sense that, well, if I just start over, it'll be great. And that may not be true. So again, there's just so much to do here. Here it's like a resting, rejuvenation, and sort of like letting nature take its course, letting the new beginning come to us of sorts. But here it's like an idealization of what does the future bring? I don't know. I'm going to sort of live in the fantasy, right? And so that brings us to the end of our major arcana. What I'm going to do is just run through really quick, and I am going to mark these along the way. But I just want to give you a preview of the different minor arcana. We're going to start with swords, and I'm going to go through as quickly as I can just to give you a preview. I would encourage you to explore these decks online if it's something that interests you. Again, they are very, very affordable. They are great for beginners, for people who are looking to learn, because, they get these, the great books that come with them. And, they're really very helpful. I mean, they really tell a story, each of them, to be honest with you. I mean, the Wild Reflections, look at that. The 7 of Swords is normally an energy of like sneakiness or of hiding something. But you've got this individual in the Wild Reflections that almost looks like he's coming out to get you in a positive way, right? In the best possible way. Like someone who is like a lover that's coming toward you and is going to hit you with Cupid's arrow. But by contrast, the 7 of Swords here, it's like a person on a mission going off on a quest to sneak attack, if you will. 8 of Swords, we're just going to keep rolling through. 9 of Swords, again, there's just a general energy there that's pretty consistent. 10 of Swords, it's just really, it's magical, I think, the way that the artists interpret these things. Page of Swords, Knight of Swords, Queen of Swords, and I'm going through this quickly so you can get a sense. If you're looking at buying these decks, this is what you're getting yourself into, right? And I'm up to the King of Swords now. Look at this King of Swords over here. He's like kind of fat and happy. He's got his various mythological creatures behind him. He's lived the life. He's been the life of mystery. He's been the life of rejuvenation, and he is like set in his ways. Whereas this King of Swords, he's moving. He's over here just exploring the unknown. And the King of Swords in the traditional is really just settled in his ways. So again, very, very different interpretations. Now we're shifting over to our Wands energy. Just look at the differential on that. It really just speaks to a different kind of energy. 2 of Wands, very inclusive. I love that about this company. That, the Wild Reflections here and the 2 of Wands has an individual, relaxing with a bike. There's some other individuals with different abilities. There's different handicaps and so forth that are through here, but just a very different energy. We had the motorcycle, now we've got a bicycle, and again, there's individuals in here with different abilities. 2 of Wands, just getting a sense of that. And of course, they're facing different ways a lot of times. 3 of Wands, again, if you're doing a reading, 3 of Wands in the Wild Reflections is looking inward and also outward to the future, whereas the 3 of Wands traditionally is just looking out at the future, not looking at the querent. And the 3 of Wands in the Sacred Witch is looking to the right and is more of a inside energy. So very, very different. And I know I keep saying that, but I can't stress it enough. I mean, same goes for the Four of Wands, the Five of Wands. I mean, again, Five of Wands in the sacred, Wild Reflections, very celebratory. By contrast, the original is very combative. And the Five of Wands almost seems like, you know, we're uniting over something. Six of Wands, Seven of Wands. I am going to be marking these, of course. Eight of Wands. And again, one of the main differences, you know, Eight of Wands here in Wild Reflections, almost an energy of building a fire of sorts. Whereas the Eight of Wands in the Sacred Witch is like cross purposes. Maybe you have like a mixed message or somebody who, you know, there's a message, you know, communication that's not working. And, you know, in the original, you've got the communication that's just coming in quickly. Nine of Wands, 10 of Wands. I'm not trying to give you all the answers on this because I certainly don't have them. They all vary reading to reading. Page of Wands. But the main take-home message is these cards, the cards you use should speak to you. And that's why I'm sharing them with you, is because I want, if you're going to be spending money on cards, that you're using, you know, that you're going with cards that work for who you are and what your energy is and what you're looking for, right? I mean, just look at the differential there on the Ace of Cups versus the Ace of Cups in the original and the Ace of Cups in the Sacred Witch. I mean, they're all very, very different messages. Two of Cups. I mean, again, we got some nice diversity here. We love that. We love diversity. Equity and inclusion. Do with that what you will. Okay. Three of Cups. You know, it's just a great set. I really do love this designer. They do a lot to help give, again, a story as you're telling your reading to whoever you're giving a reading to. It leaves a lot of room for interpretation. I'm sorry, I'm on the Seven of Cups now. And the Eight of Cups. I mean, it's just beautiful. I mean, look at the coloration on that for the Wild Reflections. If you're somebody looking for a really beautiful deck, I can't lie, the Wild Reflections is just gorgeous. I mean, you can't miss with this. Just look at the vibrant colors. We're on 10 of Cups now. Page of Cups. Knight of Cups. Just, again, very, very different. Queen of Cups. Look at our King of Cups here. Just so much of a celebration with the Wild Reflections versus more of a stable energy with our Sacred Witch. We're moving on to Pentacles. I will mark this as well. Pentacles energy. I mean, just gorgeous. This is our Two of Pentacles. And, I mean, just, you can see the different angles here. Because the Two of Pentacles, of course, speaks of balance between two different things. And the angles there are just absolutely crucial. Three of Pentacles, Four of Pentacles, Five of Pentacles. Again, super different. Six of Pentacles. I mean, just really, I can't stress this enough. I don't want to, like, again, I'm not trying to give you my interpretation too much because I want you to have your own. But it is, suffice it to say, very different. Seven of Pentacles. Eight of Pentacles. I mean, you know, just look at that with the Wild Reflections. I mean, this person is growing something. They're growing flowers, these sunflowers, just from scratch and you know, love and tenderness. Whereas on the Sacred Witch, you know, you've got an alchemist here, like making it work. And in the original, it's sort of like, oh, I gotta go to work today. You know, like I'm putting in the work, but I don't know if I really want to. You know, Nine of Pentacles. Just stunning. 10 of Pentacles, very happy card. You can see in the Sacred Witch, you've almost got people, like somebody proposing or embracing, or, you know, a future with somebody else that hasn't happened yet. Whereas the 10 of Pentacles in the Wild Reflections is looking sort of back at a future that has happened. So it's like looking like you're in the future and you're looking back. Same with the original very much. Page of Pentacles. And then our Knight of Pentacles. Let's take a look. I mean, in the Wild Reflections, it's a map to get somewhere. The Knight of Pentacles in the original is just kind of not moving, but determined. And the Knight of Pentacles in the original is almost not just determined, but like really like dug into this. You know, they're really committed to the effort and they know it's going to be a battle, but they're there for it. You know, they got this helmet on and they're riding a bull. Taurus energy, of course. Queen of Pentacles. I mean, look at the difference in energy and vibes, you know. And then finally, we're getting to our King of Pentacles in each. And, you know, I would just say at the end of it all, you know, your reading is your reading, and you should go with whatever works for you if you're a tarot reader, or if you're, you know, whether you're doing it for other people, for yourself. but really just take a look at the decks you're using and, you know, really appreciate the differences and the energy and the vibes that each deck is giving off. Refer, of course, to the manuals, and if you need to. I don't often read in the reverse, but, you know, they have them here, which is great if you're going to do that. I can't, you know, speak highly enough of that. Love our boxes, love the price point, so cannot speak highly enough about Wyspell. So anyway, I'm not being sponsored as usual. I'm just sharing with you some of the decks that I love. I appreciate you sitting with me and enjoying my collection. Have a great night.